and welcome to the class. I think we are live and everything is working okay, I hope. Fingers crossed we have no problem with the connection and the internet. We also have 6 people working from home, so it's possible some distraction and some disruption. And also this morning, a very interesting morning because we had the speaking class, but also I think we had a little mouse in the room. So I'm in the I'm in the shed, and the shed is corbatito in Espanol, and I think we had a little mouse this morning. So hopefully, interruption with another mouse, and you will see me. If we have another mouse, we might have to cancel the class, but no problem. We continue today with a similar structure compared to the other classes, and we begin with an introduction document about the grammar. So maybe today it's not your first day. It's possible with the classes, but it is possible. We have some people who are new to the class, and welcome. Thank you for connecting. Thank you for checking the class. And some people visit regularly, and some people visit okay, and some people never visit at all. So this is the plan for today. We continue with the introduction document, and you can learn some things. Okay. On the left, we can see the plan for this week. So every morning at 9 o'clock, we have a speaking session. We have a group with a maximum of 10. Every morning at 9 o'clock. We have a WhatsApp group to book and to reserve your place. You can join the WhatsApp group. The link is available on the Facebook page on the top, and you are welcome to join the speaking group. It's open for everybody, and people have very different levels, but it's really good. And that's the plan for tomorrow and with this way. It's a good idea to hopefully teach people who cannot access English classes, who cannot access English teachers. It's a good opportunity for me to grow online and to reach new people, and it's very, very good opportunity for everybody. All day at 4 o'clock, we have a specific webinar, which is another type of class every day at 4 o'clock, and you are welcome to attend. So if you want to join the webinar today at 4 o'clock, you can contact. Normally the topic is sport, but if people are interested in another class, we can change to maybe conversation or to different parts of English. So that is possible for today at 4 o'clock. Tomorrow we have the IELTS exam at working perfect. Okay, so you are familiar with this document, and this document is in relation to the introduction. So yeah, perfect. This is the introduction document. You may be familiar with this document, but if you are new to the class, this is very, very new for you. Every day, this is the basis, and this document is very important all the time. It's the foundation, it's the key for English. So if you are a beginner, you need to be familiar with this document. If you are an expert, you still need to refresh, and you still need to be very comfortable with concepts and all the terms and all the technical vocabulary here on the list. Okay, so this is the reason I explain this list every day. And today I just want to explain the vocabulary and just to introduce the terms first, because during the class I mention frequently the technical vocabulary, so it's necessary you understand the technical vocabulary before the class. Okay, so for me, there are three sections. The first section is use of English, the second section are the tense, and the third section is grammar. They're the three important sections of this, and in my opinion, the structure of English in general. Other schools will have a very, very similar structure. Every book will have a very, very similar structure. So this document is practically the same. It's extremely similar compared to other books, other schools. It's the same content for everybody. But for me, probably the most important is the use of English. So I love teaching this area because it's real English. It's the normal vocabulary we use in conversation. It's the normal expressions people use in it's really, really good. And for sure, this area I think is the most important. So in use of English, we have different accents and we have different dialects. So people speak English a little differently in different parts of the world. In Ireland, we have a particular accent. We have a little different dialects, different vocabulary. It's the same in England. You have very different accents and dialects in different parts. In the United States, it's incredibly different. You have a big, big country with a big distance and people speak very, very differently. You have Australia, Canada, New Zealand. So English is difficult to understand all the dialects and all the accents. And for this reason, I try to focus the class on this area. We also have phrasal verbs. So phrasal verbs are very particular and very unique to English. They are a combination of a verb plus a preposition. And when you combine the two, it creates a phrasal verb with a second significance. Sometimes it's literal with a direct significance, but the second time it's possible a second significance. And the phrasal verbs are a massive part of English. We use phrase, native speakers use phrasal verbs every moment, all the time. Normal situations with family and friends all the time, and also in professional, serious, very, very formal situations. So phrasal verbs are unique to English. They are very small, but they can change the significance completely of a sentence. And we have thousands and thousands of phrasal verbs. For this reason, they are very, very important. And we need to focus a lot on phrasal verbs. Today, I have a document full of phrasal verbs. And the idea is to teach little by little the expressions, the vocabulary, and the phrasal verbs. Similarly, we have idioms, and idioms are expressions, and we use expressions all the time, also with family situations, social situations, but also in formal situations and very professional situations. Idioms, expressions are a big, big part of English. And again, we have thousands of expressions and idioms and phrasal verbs. So they are the biggest area for me to really understand fluent, advanced English. So again, my class is probably dedicated a lot to these 2 or 3 topics. Similarly, conversation is important. So you are practicing English, you are learning English. It's necessary that you probably try to practice conversation frequently, but ideally you need somebody to correct your speaking. So that would be the ideal situation, but you need to probably practice conversation frequently and regularly, and hopefully somebody can correct you. Remember, every morning we have a speaking group. You are welcome to join the speaking group at 9 o'clock in Ireland, and it's a maximum of 10 people, and it's just good opportunity to practice conversation. Pronunciation is also important in English, and we have a lot of irregular words, irregular sounds that we pronounce in English, and during the class I try to identify the errors, I try to identify the key points in relation to pronunciation. So that's a big part of English. The second area are tenses. So when you speak a language, you totally need to be familiar with the different times. So if you speak Japanese, if you speak Chinese, if you speak English, you need to be aware of the time. Do you speak in the present? Is the action in the past? Is the action in the future? And in English, we have some terms, we have some concepts that you need to be very familiar with at the beginning. For example, the simple, we have the present simple, the past simple, and the future simple. The past simple is a little more difficult because we have a lot of irregular verbs in the past simple. So probably this is a massive area to remember, to use the vocabulary, and to know the list of irregular verbs in the past simple. Okay, so that's the present simple, past simple, future simple. We also have the continuous. Present continuous, I am eating, I am drinking, I am going. Past continuous, I was eating, I was drinking, I was going. And the future continuous, I will be eating, I will be going, I will be drinking. The structure is usually the subject, the extra auxiliary verb to be, and the gerund. So here you can see the term the gerund. In Espanol it's gerundio, and in Portuguese maybe it's similar. In other languages I'm not sure, but the gerund in English is the ing, eating, drinking, going, looking, okay? That is the continuous and the simple. The next idea is the perfect. We have the present perfect and the past perfect. They're the most basic and they are extremely frequent and extremely common. And we have the future perfect, but it's a little more advanced. So the present perfect is one action or period that happened in the past. It's completed, it's finished, but the consequences are relevant and related to the present. And the structure is the subject, the extra auxiliary verb to have, and the participle of the verb. So the participle is typically the third column. Go, went, gone. The third column is used to create the present perfect and the past perfect. So one example, I have eaten my breakfast this morning. It's finished, it's completed, but it is related to the present. It is related to now because at the moment I am not hungry. So I have eaten my breakfast is the present perfect. The past perfect is the period of time in the past. It's finished, it's completed, but usually before another action in the past simple. So the construction is very similar. I had eaten my breakfast before my friend contacted me. That's the little difference between the present perfect and the past perfect. It is possible a little more advanced. Present perfect continuous, past perfect continuous. I had been eating, so it's a little more complicated if you want. And the future perfect as well is possible and it's advanced. So the simple, continuous, and perfect are really, really common, really important, and you need to be very familiar with these terms and these concepts incredibly well because they are such a big part of English. And for English classes, you need to be very familiar with the terms because during my class, I explain the technical vocabulary and I explain the tenses frequently. Okay. The next idea is the infinitive. So here we have the infinitive, which is the base of the verb, and the infinitive is typically to. For example, to go, to eat, to drink, to have, to look, to talk. That's the infinitive. To look plus the verb. Okay, that's normally infinitive, and frequently I mention the infinitive. Conditionals are very, very particular to English, and we have a lot of conditionals in the book. When you study conditionals, you need to be very, very concentrated. You need to have a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm to study the conditionals because we have a lot. We have the zero conditional, first conditional. In conversation, it's less strict, in my opinion. It's more flexible, and basically, it depends on the word if. For example, if it rains today, I will not go to the city centre. If I meet my friend in the future, I will mention the sport. So basically, it's depending on if. That's the idea of the conditional, and it's, of course, it can be a little advanced, a little complicated in the theory, and it's an important area that you are familiar with, and it's an important area to know very, very well. Finally, a very nice structure and a very frequent structure is the active and the passive. So this is a technical name, active and passive. So the idea of the active is the subject, the verb, and the object. I drink the water. That's the typical structure. It's called active. And then to create the passive, we change the position. So the water, we introduce an extra verb to be. The water is, because it's the present. Drunk is the participle, by me. That's the concept of the active and the passive. It's very impressive and it's very frequent in English. We use it all the time. It's typical in movies, in news, in documentaries, in series, in conversation. It's extremely common, very impressive, and you need to be very clear and understand it very, very well. So they are the most typical verbs. We have some birds on the top. We have some mice in the room. We have some spiders. We have some dogs. It's like a jungle in here. Um, so they're the typical expressions and the typical terms and concepts in relation to the tenses. Very, very important. Finally, we have one little tense called the reflexive verbs, or group of verbs, reflexive verbs, to adapt yourself, to wash yourself. So they are important as well. Okay. Grammar. So other grammar concepts are important. Other grammar terms are important. Of course, in my class, I mention a lot these terms. For example, noun, adjective, article, modal verb, preposition. You need to understand these perfectly. For example, a noun is a person, a place, or a thing, and every noun you need an article. We have two articles in English. We have a pen or the pen, el boli or la boli, no sé en español, pero boli is in English is pen, and we can say a pen in general or the pen. They're the two articles. When the noun begins with a vowel, a, e, I, o, u, we use the article an orange, an apple. Okay, that's article, noun, adjective. The function of the adjective is to describe the noun. Okay, so the adjective describes the noun. Pen, a big pen, a red pen. So the adjective is important to describe the noun, and the position of the adjective is before the noun. This is important because in Portuguese, in Spanish, the position is after. Okay, so really, really good, really important. Article, noun, adjective. We also have the concept of the adverb. So the adverb's function is to describe the verb. Okay, we have a lot of verbs: to eat, to go, to drink, to talk, and the adverb typically ends in ly, and the position of the adverb is after the verb. For example, drink quickly, talk slowly, run rapidly. So the adverb's function is to describe the verb. The position is typical after, and the ending is typical ly. You can see a few examples here: quickly, slowly, softly. And adverbs are very important and extremely big part of English. Also, modal verbs. We have a category of verbs called modal verbs. You can see can, could, may, might, shall, should, ought to, must. They are the most common modal verbs, and we use modal verbs in particular situations. For example, ability: I can play the piano, I can run a marathon. Ability and permission: I can enter the room, I can travel to Spain, or I cannot. It's not permission, no permission. So can is typical for ability and for permission. Could, may, and might are for the situations of possibility and the situations of options. I could travel to London. I could travel to France. It's an option, it's a possibility, but I will not because it's dangerous, maybe because of the crisis. So can, is ability and permission, but could, may, and might are for possibilities and for options. The only difference probably is may and might are maybe a little more polite and a little more formal. That's really the only difference between the two and the three. Shall is quite formal and it's very typical, and basically it's related to will, and it's usually used in the question: shall you go to Italy? Will you go to Italy? Shall we contact your friend? Shall we enter the room? It's the question will. It's more formal, it's very frequent. You need to be very familiar and very aware and very conscious of that. Should is for recommendation, situations of recommendation and situations of advice. So my advice for you: you should go to Dublin. You should contact your friend. It's my advice, it's my opinion, and it's my recommendation. So in those situations, we use should. The second verb has exactly the same significance. It's a little more formal. The pronunciation's a little bit different because the G is silent, so the pronunciation is ought to, but exactly the same in situations of recommendation and situations of advice. We use should and ought to, and probably ought to is a little more polite and a little more formal. Must is used for obligation. You have no choice, you have no option, it's an obligation. You must collect the children, you must do the work, you must contact your friend. It's an obligation and you have no choice. It's the same significance as have to. So modal verbs are a particular category of English, and they're very unique to English, and they're very frequent, and we use them all the time. The big rule with the modal verb: so normally the modal verb is before another verb. Can, go, may, like, could meet. So normally the modal verb is before another verb, and typically the other verb is the infinitive, to go, to eat, to meet, to drink. But the rule after the modal, we eliminate to. And that's the classic, fundamental, important difference with modal verbs. Prepositions. So in English, we have approximately 150 prepositions. We have so many prepositions. They are related to direction, they are related to position, and they're related to movement. Okay, again, the same example every day. I speak in general, I speak, but direction, I speak to you. Okay, look, again, I look in general, but specific direction, I look at the mouse. Okay, so look at is for direction, also for movement. I run, I run across the road, I run through the building. So direction, movement, position, and also, for example, the telephone is in my hand, over my hand, under my hand, beside my hand, in front, below. We have a lot of prepositions and they're very important. And also, in relation to phrasal verbs, we use prepositions frequently to combine with a verb, and it's possible a second significance, but there is a big association with prepositions and emotion in the phrasal verbs. For example, up is positive, happy, creation. Down is negative, depressing, destruction, and sad. So there is a connection usually with emotions and prepositions. So this is important to remember. The next section is very, very interesting. There are three technical sections: possessive adjective, possessive pronoun, and the object pronoun. So these three areas, they're very interesting, they're very common, they're very, very important, but a lot of people confuse them, especially when you learn English. So basically, it's the difference between my telephone, your telephone, masculine, his telephone, feminine, her telephone, okay? Or the second possibility, in the possessive pronoun, the telephone is mine, the telephone is yours, the telephone is his, masculine, or the telephone is hers, feminine. And finally, the object pronoun, I give the telephone to you, I give the telephone to him, masculine, or I give the telephone to her, feminine. That area, particularly his, her, his, hers, him, her. Those three categories, those three pairs are frequently confused. So pay some attention in the future to master that, because it's a very obvious error and it's very frequent. Similarly, a frequent error is the difference between this, that, these, and those. So this is basically singular in this position. That is singular in a position away from you. These is plural here in this position, and those is plural away in a different position. So that's very important. Similarly, you need to be clear the difference between another, other, the other, and the others. And during the class, I try to identify frequently the examples. Okay, questions, how to create the questions are very important in English. And during my webinars on Monday, what is one day? It's a mix between Monday and Wednesday. So on my webinars on Monday, I usually dedicate time to specific topics from grammar, and the questions will be a specific topic in relation to the grammar webinars soon. Okay, suffixes and prefixes, this is a big tip, it's a big piece of advice. So when you learn English, I recommend that you become very, very familiar with suffixes and prefixes. You try to master, you try to be very familiar with suffixes and prefixes, because they are a big indicator of the form of the word. Is the word a verb? Is the word a noun? Is it adjective? Is it adverb? The prefix and the suffix is a big indicator for this. And I have explained, I think, in previous classes, the importance of this. Linkers or conjunctions are also very important. We have a few simple linkers: and, but, or, nor, for, yet. So they're probably basic linkers or conjunctions, but of course we have more advanced linkers, for example, furthermore, moreover, however, as well as this. So we have a lot of advanced linkers, and that's very important. And that's it. So that's the most important introduction for today. They are the most important terms for the class. It's like a little warm up. So when you go to the gym, you need to do a little exercise before the real exercise. And in sport, in football, you need to warm up before the football match. So this is exactly the same. It's like a little exercise before the class. And this is what happens. So the writing is also very important. There are 5 areas when you learn English, there are 5 areas that you need to maintain. Reading is one. Grammar is probably the second. So you need to read a lot. Magazines, books, newspapers, read. Grammar, you need to study your grammar frequently. You need to understand the concepts and you need to identify the grammar in the reading. Speaking, you need to practice your speaking regularly and hopefully somebody can correct you. Listening, you need to practice your listening. You need to listen to the radio, you need to listen to television, you need to listen to movies. But in my opinion, more importantly, you probably need to interact and you need to listen to other people when you are interacting with people from different parts of the world. And then finally, writing. So a lot of people don't practice writing, especially adults, when you're not in school and it's not your first language. So writing is a big part of English and it's necessary to be very comfortable and very practiced with writing. Okay, exams are very popular as well. The Cambridge exams, the Escuela Oficial de Idiomas exams, and the IELTS exams are very popular. And I have created specific webinars dedicated to preparation for exams. And for example, tomorrow we have the IELTS webinar at 4 o'clock. Thursday we have the advanced webinar for Cambridge and Escuela Oficial de Idiomas. And Saturday we have the B2 webinar. So there's lots of different webinars available for specific exam preparation. Good. So that's the introduction. Now I want to continue with this document. So this document is very, very interesting and it's very, very nice and it's very fluent and it's very good quality English. It's a list of phrasal verbs. You are probably familiar with this document. We have started this document in January and every day the intention, the plan is to continue the explanation of the phrasal verb list every day. But of course, some days, depending on time, it's not possible. But today, I want to continue with the letter P. So the last expression we said was play up to, which means to play up to is an example, and it's a bit difficult. And I'll give you one example. So the children play up to the parents, and it means that they maybe they try to act or behave differently or more appropriately in relation to the children. It's a bit difficult, but the next one is to point out. Okay, and before we continue, I just want to show you the picture. So this is this morning. This was the emergency with the mouse in the house. So with the mouse, we had an emergency, and I decided to bring the dog into the room to save the day. And this is my hero. He's going to attack the mice and make everything better and happy again. So that's just, I wanted to show you that picture. Okay, and here are my notes. So I'm going to share the screen and I'm going to make this a bit bigger so you can see everything. And I'll just move this here because the notes are here on the bottom right. And also in relation to the mice, we have one mouse, which is singular, and 2 mice. So it's irregular in relation to English, and 1 is singular, 1 mouse and 2 mice. Okay, so that's definitely the word of today, and you will never forget this word today. So the next phrasal verb is to point out. Okay, so the verb is to point, and it's more literal. It's very clear with my finger. I point. It's like indicate. So I point direction. I point to the cinema. I point at the person. And of course, it's very rude to point. That's an expression as well, because it's impolite. It's not nice to point. The pronunciation is different from pint. So in relation to liquid, in relation to the quantity of liquid, you have 1 pint and you have the verb to point. So there is a difference in pronunciation. Also, in conversation, we say, what is your point? So very typical in conversation, when you speak with a friend, when you speak with anybody, and the person speaks, but with no direction, with no information, it's necessary to say, what is your point? What is the reason of your comment? So what is your point? So you're speaking, but really, what exactly do you want to say? So that's very typical as well. What is your point? We have vocabulary as well. Pointless, which means there's no motivation, there's no reason. For example, going to the city centre when it's raining. So for example, today it's raining and it's cold, so there's no benefit, there's no advantage, there's no reason to go to the city centre when it's cold and wet. So the trip is pointless. So that's a very typical adjective, okay? Very, very common adjective, and it means that there's no benefit, there's no point, okay? But the phrasal verb to point out is very similar to identify, okay? So in my screen, or on my screen, it's very clear, but maybe somebody points out this picture. So maybe people can see this top of this picture, and to point out is to identify and to focus on the topic. So of course, to point, you can point at or point to, but to point out is maybe to identify and to speak about the focus of that topic. And it's common. So if you want to identify a problem, you point out the problem or you point out the issue. Okay, the problem or the issue. And that means you identify and you want everybody to see. It's very similar to the verb to highlight. Okay? And in relation to other phrasal verbs with the verb to point, they are the most typical. For example, it doesn't exist point back, point under. No, the most typical and the most common is to point out, which means to identify the problem or to identify the issue. Okay, issue is like asunto in Espanol. Pull down. This document is from America. So this is a good example of the use of English and the different accents, the different dialects. And this expression, pull down, is more typical in relation to the United States. Here's the example. He pulls down about, which means approximately, $300,000 a year. So in the United States, it's possible to say pull down, which has the significance in Espanol, ganar, which has the significance in English as earn. Okay, so you can see the translation here. He earns, which is ganar, but in Ireland, it's not really possible, this expression. It's not really typical. To pull down, no, not really. We say to earn, maybe informal, but again, this one example is probably typical for the United States, okay? But in relation to pull, we have a few phrasal verbs. We say to pull back, we say to pull out, we say to pull over, we say to pull out, we have that already, pull in, they're the most typical, I think. Okay, so I need to explain probably the majority of these. To pull back is maybe originally in relation to the horse, because the verb to pull is the opposite to push. Okay, so to push and to pull. So to pull back is maybe typical in the army with the horse. So you are on the horse and you pull the horse back. So it means to stop or to retreat. Okay, so to stop or to retreat is maybe the translation. And it's typical in the military or the army. So the military plan to attack, and then the next day they decide, they change the opinion and they pull back, which is very similar to retreat. Metaphorically, in other situations, maybe you can say the same in conversation. If you want to criticize your friend, if you want to criticize the person, if you're angry, but then you decide to change your mind and you pull back. So it means maybe to stop, okay? Possibly in that situation, but literally it means to pull back, like to stop. Pull out is more typical, and the opposite is maybe in, like a commitment. So are you in for the party? Are you in for the trip? That means, are you committed? Are you ready? Are you going? So are you in for the trip means that, are you happy to travel? Are you content? Are you enthusiastic? Do you want to travel? Yes, I am in has the significance, yes, I agree, or yes, I want to go. So the significance to pull out is like to quit. So if you are in the competition and you pull out of the competition, so you remove yourself from the competition. For the trip, if you agree to the trip with your friends, you are in. But then if you change your opinion and you change your mind and you decide not to go, you pull out of the trip. It's possible in a wedding. If you commit to the wedding, you say yes to the person and you want to get married, but maybe before the wedding you pull out, so you cancel, so you decide not to continue with the commitment. Okay, so it's typical to maybe change the commitment, and not just change, but it's maybe change your opinion completely. Okay, so to pull out, very, very common in competition, very, very typical in sport, and very, very common in every situation as well. So really good. Pull over. Okay, number one, the noun is a pullover, and the significance is a jumper or a sweater. Okay, so we have vocabulary: a jumper or a sweater, which is clothes that you wear when you're very cold. The temperature today in Dublin is very cold, so you probably need a sweater or a jumper, or the other possibility is a pull over. Okay, because literally you pull the jumper over your head, and that's the reason we call it a pullover, a jumper, or a sweater. A sweater is interesting because the verb is to sweat. When you are exercising, when you are running, when you are walking, when you are very active, you sweat, como sudar in Espanol. And the typical jumper that you use when you're cold or when you're exercising, this is the significance. A sweater is the type of clothes for sports and for exercise. So there is logic to the word, and that's the significance of the substantivo, a pullover. But the verb to pull over is a little bit different in another context. It's typical with the police. So the police are chasing, perseguir or seguir. The police are chasing another car, and the police ask the other driver to pull over because you're on the motorway, you're on the road, and the police ask the other driver to pull over because you pull the car and over into the lane. Okay, so to pull over is very, very typical in the context of the police. Okay, so pull over is the instruction from the police in the car. Okay, so very, very typical in that context, from the police in the car. And that's the most typical to pull over. Of course, literally, it could be for clothes. So pull the hat over your head, pull the jacket on over your head. Very, very typical. And to pull in is probably exactly the same context in relation to the car. So the police instruct the other driver to pull over or to pull in. So it's almost the same. So the two are very, very similar in the context of the police and the cars and the chase. So the vocabulary is to chase, to follow, to chase that car, to follow. Yeah, they are the typical expressions in relation to the police when they chase the car. And we also say pedal to the metal. So the expression put the pedal to the metal, put the pedal to the metal is the significance to accelerate. So we also say put your foot down. Okay, so it's another possibility. Put your foot down. Remember, because you are late, you instruct the driver, put your foot down, which means put the pedal to the metal, which means to accelerate or to go quickly. Okay, there is another expression in relation to put your foot down in a different context completely, and it's more discipline. So if you are the parent and you want to show your discipline, you want to teach the child a lesson, you want to punish the child. So the child or the teenager asks you, mother or father, can I go to the party? And you say, no, 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 because it's very late and you don't want the child to go. So you say no. So when you say no, you put your foot down. So it's like firm position. So that's another expression, okay? So they're the most typical expressions with pull. So let me see here if we have more. We probably have exactly the same. So pull in, as I said, is in relation to the vehicle. So the police instruction, they say park. To pull in for the police, number one, but also just ordinary driver. It's possible I decide to pull in. So there's no police. It's just my decision because I want to go to the shop. So I pull in or I pull over. So exactly the same. Pull out is exactly as I said, typical with a commitment. So the party, you pull out. The wedding, you pull out, you cancel. But overall, for the car, I can pull the car out, which has the significance I remove the car from space. So that's possible as well. Yes, there is another one, to pull through, and this is very, very typical. Okay, so there is another one, to pull through, and remember the verb to pull, through is a través. So this is a metaphor in a difficult situation. So imagine maybe the person or the dog is very ill or very, very sick, and it's very improbable or unlikely. So this is difficult vocabulary. We say improbable, it's irregular or unlikely to survive. Okay, so you imagine the situation with the person is very sick or very ill, and it's improbable they survive, or it's unlikely they survive, but you want this person to pull through. So through is significant for the difficult moment until the better moment. It's like a lot of effort, and a lot of struggle. So the significance is to survive. Is very ill, and I say, I hope you pull through. You have a difficult moment. I hope you pull through. I hope you survive. And the word wall is very, very bare. It's very, very empty. Okay, so that's very, very typical. But barely is like almost, it's like casi nunca. Okay, so we have barely and we have hardly, and these are very, very similar. So the significance is like casi nunca in Espanol or Portuguese. And if I say to you, I have barely €2, I have barely 10 minutes, that means that's the minimum. I have only €2, and it was difficult to find €2 or 10 minutes. I barely have 10 minutes. So yes, I have 10 minutes, but there's extreme pressure on the 10 minutes. So this vocabulary is very, very good. And the expression here, I didn't think, so it's a negative in the past. And remember, when we create the past with did not, the next verb is the infinitive, even though it's the past. Yes, so the verb to think, I thought. But the negative for the verb to think is I did not think. So the next verb is the infinitive, even though it's the past. That's the seed. So it's typical in sport. If the child is very talented at sport, the child is very talented at football, and you want the child to have a career, a professional career, but it's a long road, it's a long way, but you hope will arrive, so you hope the child will make it. So the significance of to make it is maybe to have success or to arrive at the correct destination. And here, I didn't think she was going to arrive, she was going to serve. Put, and we have a lot of combinations with the verb to put. Just write a few. We say to put back, to put out, to put in is literal. Okay, just let me write them just to show you. Maybe we can say to put in, to put. So here we have the verb to put, which in Espanol is poner. Okay, for example, literal, I put my telephone on the table, I put my jacket on, literal, literal, literal. But we have some possible frequent phrasal verb positions that change the significance completely. Maybe put back is I take the chocolate, but I feel guilty, so I put the chocolate. It's like to return, okay? But it's a little bit flexible. You could say maybe the project, because there is a delay, like retraso, there is a little delay, so the project is put back until January. Okay, so it's like a delay. That's a little flexible and a little creative, but you need to be very, very clear. Maybe you can say in relation to money, you can say to put back. More, well, definitely typical with money, to put away. Okay, so you have money today, this is your salary, but you want to keep some of your salary for the future. So we say to put away your money for a rainy day. That's a very typical expression. So I'm going to tell you this expression: to put money away for a rainy day. So this is a very, very famous expression, and the significance is you save money for a dangerous situation, for a lot of problems, because in the future it is possible you have a lot of changes, you have a crisis, you have difficult situations in the future. So today, when you earn a lot of money, you need to put the money away, you need to keep, you need to save the money for a difficult moment. Okay, to keep or to save. So I'll just put the vocabulary here. The money, very, very good. So to put away. Also, there's a second context completely different in relation to put away, and it's significant for food. So I give you one example. I love chocolate. I really, really love chocolate. Maybe you're a chocoholic, so you love chocolate. So I like, for example, Easter, we receive chocolate, and every Easter I put away 3 Easter eggs in one day. So the significance in this case with food, if I put away my food, number one, it's typical for children in their room. When the room is very dirty, the child needs to put away the clothes, like to tidy. Okay, that's number one. So for the room is very tidy, so the child needs to put away the things. But number two, in relation to food, the food, but not in the room, not in the area, in my stomach. So to put food away is to eat. Okay, so it could be to tidy, it could be to eat, it could be to drink. That's typical. And there is another context with put away, which is in relation to prison. So the criminal or the robber is put away from society. So the significance is to go to prison. So the criminal was, so the judge put the criminal away, but the criminal was put away. So it's related to go to jail. So this is a really, really very, very important and useful verb to combine the prepositions. And this could be one of the most flexible, one of the most adaptable, one of the important verbs in relation to phrasal verbs, to put. Okay, so they typically maybe to put away. To put up is literal. So in my room, I have a poster and I put up a wall. So that's literal. But the second significance is maybe put up with. And this is really fluent, it's really advanced, it's really good English. And the significance is to tolerate. So I need to put up with the noise. I need to put up with the weather. I am in Dublin at the moment and it's freezing cold. But I have no choice. I must put up with the weather. So I must tolerate. I must cope. I must stand, to bear. So these are all synonyms with the phrasal verb to put up with, and it means to tolerate. So the traffic is very bad, but you must put up with the traffic. You must put up with the noise. And yes, of course, there is a second context. Okay, and to put somebody up, and this is extremely typical, very common, and really, really big part of English. And the significance is to accommodate. So your friend arrives to your house and your friend needs help with accommodation. Your friend needs a place to sleep. So you put your friend up. And the significance is you give a bed, you give them room, you give them accommodation. Okay, so to give someone accommodation. Really, really fluent, really, really typical. So there's two situations with with put up, to put up with, and to put somebody up. Really, really good quality English, really good quality phrasal verbs, really fluent, really typical, and a perfect example of the difficulty of phrasal verbs when you learn English. Okay, put down. Yes, it's literal. So the child has the dangerous object. Okay, the child is holding the dangerous object, and the parent instructs the child, put the object down. So that's literal. The police, exactly the same. They have the instruction for the criminal with the pistol. They say, put the pistol down, put the gun down. So that's typical as well. So it's the dangerous object, and it's the instruction, number one. The second one is in relation to emotions. So you have a relationship, friendship, okay, and one friend always criticizes the other person. So it's a toxic friendship, okay, and this friend always criticizes the other friend. So this friend says, "Oh, you look horrible today. That jumper is really ugly. You look very sad." So it's criticize, 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 and constantly this friend puts the other person down. So to put somebody down is to criticize or to make the other person feel very bad. Okay, to make someone feel bad, to put someone down. Really, really typical. So that's the second significance. Again, maybe in relation to food, it could be the same. I like to put the dog, or to kill the pet when the vet needs to kill the pet because the pet is very, very sick. The typical phrasal verb we say is the vet puts the dog down, and that means to kill the dog with an injection. Okay, so to put down the dog is to kill the dog because the dog is very, very sick. So you need to give an injection to kill. Okay, injection to kill the dog. Very, very sad. So they're very, very typical. So to put someone down, or to put the dog down, and they are the most typical. Okay, to put out, yeah, is literal. So if you have a new idea, for example, a business, you have a new business and you want to advertise, you want to promote, so you want to put out the word, you want to put out the information. That's literal, like send out. Okay, no problem. But it's a bit more advanced and a bit more fluent. There's a next expression. He or she is very put out. Okay, and this is very typical. I'll give you another expression. We say her nose, or his nose is out of joint. Okay, so the first one we'll say she, and the second one we say he. Okay, so if she is very put out, that means she feels neglected, she feels ignored, she feels something bad happened to her. So I'll give you an example for the party. One friend invites everybody to the party, but this friend ignores this person. So everybody receives the invitation except this person. So she feels very ignored, she feels very put out, because normally she's in the group, but this occasion she is ignored. So she feels very put out. That's the context. We use it in lots of situations. I feel very put out because of the behavior, because somebody ignored me or somebody did not include me. So to feel very put out is very, very typical. The next expression is almost the same. So the nose is typically in your joint. So the joint is part of the body. And if your nose is out of joint, something is a little bit bad. You feel bad. So you feel ignored. So if your nose is out of joint, you feel a little upset. You feel a little sad because of the behavior of somebody towards you. And in this context, we say he or she has the hump. So a hump is typical for the camel. When you have the animal, the camel, and the camel has the hump, okay? But if the person has a hump, we don't say a hump, we say has the hump. So when the person has the hump, which is like the on the back, it means you're very angry, you're very disappointed, you're very upset because people excluded you, people did not tell you about the party, people ignored you, so you're sad and your body is like this. So you create a hump. So that's really informal, really common. If the person has the hump, the significance is they feel ignored, they feel excluded, okay, or feel upset. To feel upset and excluded. Good. Okay, and here, the next one to put in is typical in the context of work. So if you put in the work, that means you give the hours, you prepare, you work hard, you work every hour, so you dedicate a lot of time. So you put in the effort or you put in the work. Okay, so it's more literal and it's more understandable, I think. It's like that you give the work into the project, into the exam. So it's typical in because maybe could be flexible, but it could be a few different situations. So it's logical, put yourself around. So that means you put yourself in lots of different situations. You contact a lot of different people. It could be professional. So you are looking for a job. You need to put yourself around. So it could be related to looking for a job. It could be related to maybe romantic adventures, as somebody said yesterday, the vocabulary romantic adventure. So the person has a romantic relationship with maybe lots of different people. That's possibly the informal situation to put yourself around. But as I said, it could be professional when you are looking for your job. You're putting your information around, you're putting your CV around. So it's logical and it's probably flexible. So that's a perfect explanation of the verb to put. You can see all the expressions with to put, okay? And here you have you have put across, which again is another one. So the preposition is across, but it's logical and it's like to communicate. So now I try to communicate to you, I try to teach, so I try to put my idea, I try to put my explanation across to you. Okay, so to put something across is to communicate. And here's the example. Um, so the verb is to think, and it's irregular in the past, I think, but I thought. Okay, Mrs. Smith put her ideas across rather clearly. Here, rather is like bastante in Espanol, like quite. Rather in English is like quite. So I thought Mrs. Smith put her ideas across. So she communicated her ideas bastante bien, quite clearly in the meeting. Okay. Put away is, as I said, to tidy. Okay, so in the room everything is dirty and you want to put everything away. And here's the explanation. I told you kids to put your toys away, to tidy the room. Okay, and the difference between say and tell. Say is typical the preposition to. I say to you, you say to me, I said to the children. But with tell, it's not necessary preposition. So tell, no preposition. I tell you, you tell me, he tells her. So tell, there's no preposition. And say, yes, it's more typical the preposition. Okay? Put down, as I said, is the insult. Okay? So when one friend criticizes the other friend, they put the other person down. And here's the example. She always puts down people who don't share her opinions. So the verb to share, compartir. So she always criticizes, she always insults people with different ideas. We have more. Yeah, sorry. So put in, because the one I see that's very important is this one, put off, which is very, very common. But put in is, as I said, when you work, you submit your work. But here's the example. Okay, so he put in for a transfer. That means he asked or he submitted. Typical in school, you have your project and you put in your project, you send in or submit. But if typical in your job, if you want a holiday, if you want to give official notification for your holiday, if you want to give official notification for your change of position, you put in for a change. So that means you ask for a change. The next one is typical, and I'm going to give you two examples. To put off has the significance to postpone. Okay, so remember, if you have the wedding, everything is planned for the wedding, everything is organized, you sent the invitations, you have your dress, you have your suit, you're prepared for the wedding, everything is good. And finally, we have a pandemic, so you need to put the wedding off. So the significance is to postpone. There is a difference between to put off and to call off. So put off is to postpone until another day. So there's a massive difference. You put the wedding off, that means you postpone until another day. So you will have the wedding later. But to call off is to cancel. So to completely cancel the wedding, you call off. So to cancel is call off, and to postpone is to put off. So really, really good quality phrasal verb, really, really typical English. To put off is to postpone. But we have another context to put off. One context, but the same significance. Okay, so in relation to food. So I am preparing my food, I am eating my dinner, and I'm very happy. The food is fantastic, and I look on the floor and I see a mouse. So, or I see a snake, or I'm eating my dinner and I watch a movie and it's a very disgusting movie, a lot of blood, a lot of disgusting pictures on the movie. So the movie puts me off my dinner in relation to appetite. So the movie put me off is in relation to lose your appetite. Okay, really, really typical in relation to food. And the other example is similar in sport or an exam. You require a lot of concentration in your exam. You require concentration. You need quiet. But you hear a noise, a constant noise, and waving the hands, the supporters are distracting the person. So the supporters try to put the athlete or the footballer off. So very, really good and really common. Yeah. So we have another one. To put on is literal. My jacket, my hat. I put on my hat. But the second significance is common, and it's related to children. And imagine the day for school. In the morning, the child does not want to go to school, so the child pretends. That's a very fingir in Espanol. So the child pretends, or the child acts that they have a pain in the stomach. I don't want to go to school. I feel very sick. I'm a very good actor, by the way. So the child is pretending the child does not want to go to school. He's saying that he has a pain in his stomach, but really he or she does not have a pain in the stomach. So they are putting the illness, they are putting the sickness on, similar to the concept of the jacket, except this situation, it's the behavior of being sick and they put it on. So to put on is to trick, to deceive in relation to acting. Really, really good quality vocabulary. And I hope that example is very clear. Okay, so here they can see the verb to deceive, to put on. And I didn't believe, again, the verb to believe in the present, but in the past, it's the negative. I did not, plus the infinitive. I did not believe a thing he said. I think he was putting me on or putting it on. So he was tricking me. He was acting. Okay. Excellent. So they are the most typical. And yes, as I said, put out is inconvenience. You feel sad, you feel ignored, you put out. There is another one with put out in relation to the fire. So the typical vocabulary to extinguish the flame or to extinguish the fire, we always say to put out the fire. Okay. In relation to fire, we say set something on fire. You can say start the fire, but probably here it's set something on fire is more difficult. That means to put something on fire. But the opposite, to stop the fire, we say to put out the fire. Okay, so it's a metaphor. Obviously the fireman and the firewomen put out the fire, they stop the fire, but it's a metaphor for problems. If you are the manager, if you are the boss, and you are solving the problems, you put out the problems.